Shocking discovery. I caught my wife cheating after years of trust. What happened next will leave you speechless. I never thought I'd be the guy posting here. But here I am. I've seen my fair share of betrayal growing up, but I never thought it would happen to me. Not like this. Not with her. Let me start from the beginning. I grew up in a small town near St. Louis. My parents owned a bar and restaurant, so I spent most of my childhood around adults who didn't censor themselves. I saw people at their best and their worst, especially when alcohol was involved. I saw married men sneak off with women who weren't their wives. I saw women sit across from their husbands, smiling like nothing was wrong, when I knew they had been there the night before with someone else. I learned early on that people are good at lying, and even better at hiding it. Maybe that's why I've always had a hard time trusting people. Then came Victoria. She was different. At least, I thought she was. She was confident, funny, and had this way of making me feel like the only person in the world when she looked at me. We met through mutual friends, dated for a couple of years, and got married. It wasn't perfect, but what relationship is? We had our ups and downs, but I thought we had built something solid. Now I know that was just an illusion. A couple of weeks ago, Victoria told me she was going out with friends. It wasn't anything new. She had a pretty active social life, always grabbing drinks with coworkers or planning girls' nights. I didn't think much of it, but that night felt different. She got home late. Not late, but later than usual. Her makeup was still fresh. Her perfume was strong, like she had just reapplied it. She was in a good mood, almost too good. But when I asked how her night was, she kept it short. Oh, it was fun. Just the usual. You know how the girls are. Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. I brushed it off. I told myself I was overthinking, that my childhood experiences had made me paranoid, that I had no real reason to doubt her. But then I noticed the little things. She started guarding her phone more. She'd smile at texts but wouldn't say who they were from. She started working later, going out more often, and every time I asked, she had an answer ready, like she had rehearsed it. I didn't want to be that guy, the suspicious, insecure husband, so I let it go until one night, when she got a text, glanced at it, and immediately flipped her phone over. That was the moment something clicked. I was about to find out that my entire marriage was built on a lie. After that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Victoria had always been attached to her phone, but now it was different. Before, she'd scroll through Instagram or text her friends in front of me without a second thought. But lately, the second notification popped up, she'd tilt her screen away. If I so much as glanced in her direction, she'd lock it and set it face down. And the worst part? She didn't even realize she was doing it. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being unfair. But my gut wouldn't let it go. So I tested her. The next time she got home from a girls' night, I casually asked who all was there. She rattled off a few names, the same group she always mentioned, but something felt rehearsed about it, like she had memorized a script. So I pushed a little. Oh yeah? What did you guys do? She hesitated for just a second. We just grabbed some drinks at Olivia's place. Nothing crazy. Except Olivia was out of town. I knew that because I had seen her Instagram story earlier that day. She was on a beach in Florida. I didn't call Victoria out right away. I just nodded. Sounds fun. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying that small hesitation, that quick lie. It wasn't even a big lie, but why lie at all? The next morning, I decided to watch her a little closer. I started noticing more things. She started getting dressed up more often for work events she never used to care about. She'd leave the house in one outfit, but come home in another, claiming she spilled something. She started showering the second she got home, even if it was late at night. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, but my gut wouldn't shut up. Then, a few days later, I found the first real red flag. She had just left for work, and I was picking up some of her laundry to throw in the wash. As I grabbed her jeans, something small and shiny fell out of the back pocket. A hotel key card. I just stared at it. My hands felt numb. My whole body went cold. I turned it over, reading the name of the hotel. It was one of those fancy business hotels downtown, the kind you stay in when you're traveling for work or having an affair. I sat down on the bed, key card in hand, heart pounding in my chest. I could have called her right then. I could have confronted her. But something in me held back. I needed proof. Real proof. So I made a decision. That night, I was going to start digging. I sat there for what felt like hours, just staring at that hotel key card. My mind was racing, but at the same time, everything felt still, like my brain was trying to process something it already knew but didn't want to accept. Victoria was cheating. I needed to be sure. So I did what any sane person in my position would do. I started digging. I pulled out my laptop and searched the hotel's name. It was one of those upscale places downtown, mostly used for business days. I checked her emails. Yeah, I know it's wrong, but let's not pretend she wasn't doing worse. Nothing suspicious. Then I checked our bank statements. That's when my stomach dropped. A charge from that hotel, dated 2 weeks ago. She never mentioned staying in a hotel. In fact, I remember that night. She had told me she was working late and crashed at her friend Olivia's place because they were drinking. Olivia, the same Olivia who had been in Florida the other night. The lies were piling up, and I wasn't even done digging. I checked her location history on Google. She wasn't the most tech-savvy, and I knew she had it turned on. Bingo! She had been at that hotel for 4 hours that night. I felt sick. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. This wasn't some oops. I fell asleep at a friend's house. This was deliberate, planned. I didn't know how to confront her. Not yet. I needed more. So I took a step further. I called the hotel. Me. Hey, I think I left something in my wife's room the other night. She stayed there recently, but I can't remember the room number. Her name's Victoria, last name. Could you check for me? Receptionist. Sure, let me see. Yes, I see a reservation under that name. It was for one night. Would you like me to check if anything was left in the room? Me. Actually, could you remind me what room number was? I think I left it in the nightstand. Receptionist. It was room 815. I thanked her and hung up, my hand shaking. She had rented a room. For one night. There was no work event. No friend's house. Just her, alone in a hotel. Or not alone at all. I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the floor. I wanted to believe there was some kind of explanation. Some reason she'd do this. That wasn't what I knew it was. But deep down, I knew the truth. And I was about to find out just how deep the betrayal went at this point. I had everything except actual confirmation. The hotel charge, the location history, the key card. There was no logical explanation that didn't involve her cheating. But I still wasn't ready to confront her. I wanted to see it for myself. So I made a plan. Victoria had another work dinner coming up that Friday. She had mentioned it in passing a few days ago, like it was no big deal. I played dumb. Oh, another late night? Guess I'll order takeout and watch some of that show you hate. She laughed. Yeah, don't wait up for me. You know how these things go. Yeah, I knew exactly how they went. That night, she left the house at 7:30 p.m., dressed up more than usual. Heels, a dress that was a little too nice for a simple work dinner. She kissed me goodbye like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't lying straight to my face. The second she was out the door, I grabbed my keys and followed her. I know I sound crazy. But at this point, I wasn't about to sit at home wondering. I needed to see it. She drove downtown like I expected, parked in a garage near the nicer bars and hotels. I parked a block away and followed her on foot, keeping my distance. She walked straight into a bar. Not a fancy work event, not a restaurant. Just a dimly lit bar filled with booze, couples, and quiet music. And then I saw him. Some guy, tall, clean-cut, looked like one of those business types, was already there, sitting at a booth in the back. The second Victoria spotted him, she smiled. Not just a polite smile. That smile, the one she used to give me when we first started dating. She slid into the booth across from him, leaning in close like they were sharing a secret. He reached across the table and touched her hand. She didn't pull away. I felt something snap inside me. This wasn't just a fling. This wasn't just a mistake. This was something real, something ongoing. I stood there, heart pounding, fists clenched, my entire world collapsing in real time. I could have walked over. I could have confronted them right then and there, caused a scene, demanded answers. But I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Then, I turned around and walked out. I wasn't going to let her lie her way out of this. Not this time. I drove home in complete silence. No music, no radio, just the sound of my own breathing and occasional turn signal clicking. I kept replaying the image in my head. Victoria, smiling at him, her hand in his, the way she leaned in, like she was hanging on to every word he said. It made me sick. By the time I got home, my hands were still shaking. I poured myself a drink, not because I needed it, but because I didn't know what else to do. I sat in the dark, staring at my phone. The picture I took was right there, clear as day. I wanted to send it to her, just attach it with a simple, "Explain this." But I didn't, not yet, because I wanted to see how far she'd take the lie. So I waited. Victoria came home around 11:45 p.m., heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she stepped inside. I stayed on the couch, drink in hand, pretending to watch TV. She smiled at me like nothing was wrong. "Hey, babe, you still up?" "Yeah, couldn't sleep." I kept my tone even casual. She walked over and leaned down to kiss me. I forced myself not to flinch. "How was the dinner?" I asked, taking a sip of my drink. She sighed dramatically. "Ugh, exhausting. Just a bunch of corporate talk and wine. You know how it is." I nodded. "Who all was there?" She hesitated. "Oh, just the usual team. Sarah, Mike, Lauren know the same people." Lie. I fought the urge to react. I just nodded again. "Sounds boring." "So boring," she laughed, kicking off her heels. "I need a shower. I smell like red wine and office gossip." And just like that, she walked off like nothing happened, like she hadn't spent her night with another man. I stared at my glass, gripping it so tight my knuckles turned white. I had my proof. I had my confirmation. Now I just needed to decide how I was going to end this, that I barely slept that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to Victoria breathe beside me like she hadn't just spent the night lying to my face. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to scream or throw things. That's what she expected. For me to get emotional, to lash out, to let her manipulate me into doubting myself. No, I was going to be calm. And I was going to watch her squirm. At breakfast, I acted normal. Even better than normal. I kissed her cheek, asked how she slept, made coffee. Just another happy husband starting his day. She didn't suspect a thing. "Any plans for today?" I asked casually. Victoria yawned, stretching in her chair. "Just work. Might stay late again. We got a lot going on this week." I almost laughed. "Another late night?" I said, raising an eyebrow. She smiled. "Yeah, probably. You don't mind, do you?" I shook my head. "Of course not. Work is important." She beamed at me, like she had just gotten away with something. "You're the best, babe." I smiled back. "Oh, Victoria, you have no idea." As soon as she left for work, I made my move. First, I called my bank and froze our joint account. I had my own personal savings, but I wasn't about to let her spend another dime of our money on her little hotel rendezvous. Then I started packing. Not my things. Hers. By the time she got home that night, suitcase by the door, I'd have everything laid out. But I wasn't done yet. I needed one last thing. So I sent a text. "Me? Hey, man, I need a favor." 15 minutes later, my friend Jay called me. "What's up?" "I need you to follow Victoria tonight." Silence. "Then you serious?" "Dead serious." Jay didn't even hesitate. "You got it." Tonight, I was going to get the final nail in the coffin. And tomorrow, Victoria was going to wake up to a reality she never saw coming. By the time Victoria left that evening, I was already 3 steps ahead of her. She kissed me goodbye like nothing was wrong. "Don't wait up for me," she said with a little smile. Wouldn't dream of it, I replied, watching her walk out the door like a woman without a care in the world. I waited 10 minutes, then called Jake. She just left, I said. I got her, he replied. Jake was the kind of guy you could count on for anything. No questions, no hesitation, just loyalty. He had a bike, which made it easy for him to follow without being noticed. I sat at home, staring at my phone, waiting for the inevitable. It didn't take long. Jake, she's downtown, parked in the same garage as before. Jake, she's walking into the same bar. Jake, same guy is already there. Tall business type. Then, a few minutes later, Jake, dude, she just kissed him. I stared at the screen. My stomach twisted, but there was no shock left in me. Just cold, hard reality. I had my answer, but Jake wasn't done yet. Jake, she's leaving with him. Jake, hotel down the street. Fancy place. Just checked in. That was all I needed to hear. Stay there, I told him. I'm on my way. I drove downtown, hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. My heart was pounding, but I kept my mind clear. By the time I got there, Jake was waiting outside the hotel. Room 917, he said, nodding toward the elevators. I didn't even ask how he found out. Jake was resourceful. I walked straight into the lobby, heart pounding. No hesitation. No second guessing. The elevator ride felt like forever. My ears were ringing. Finally, I reached the 9th floor. I stood outside room 917 for a moment, just breathing. Then I knocked. Silence. I knocked again, louder this time. Footsteps. Muffled voices. Then the door opened. Victoria stood there in a silk robe, eyes wide, face draining of color. Behind her, that man, half-dressed, frozen like a deer in headlights. I didn't need any more proof. I just smiled. Hey, honey, having a good night. For a few seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. Victoria's face was pale. Her lips slightly parted like she was trying to form words but couldn't. Behind her, he stood frozen, shirt unbuttoned, belt undone, caught red-handed like an idiot in a bad movie. I let the silence stretch. Let her feel it. Then I stepped forward, tilting my head. Aren't you going to invite me in? Victoria swallowed hard. It's not what it looks like. I actually laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Not what it looks like. I repeated, glancing at the half-dressed man behind her. So, what is it then? A business meeting? A charity event? Help me understand, Vic, because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty damn clear. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. Save it. I pulled out my phone and held up the screen. A picture of them at the bar. Another of them walking into the hotel. A time-stamped screenshot of her location history. Her eyes darted to the photos, then back to me, then to the guy behind her, as if he could save her. He didn't move. Smart man. I exhaled slowly, slipping my phone back into my pocket. You know, Vic, I always thought if this day ever came, I'd be screaming, throwing things, making a scene. I smiled at her, but there was no warmth in it. Turns out I don't need to, because I already won. She blinked, confused. Won? What are you talking about? I stepped back and gestured toward the hallway. Your bags are waiting for you at home. I packed them myself. Your name is off our accounts. The locks are changed, and as of tomorrow, you'll be served divorce papers. Her mouth dropped open. You... Oh, and don't worry about finding a place to stay. I added, I hear hotels are nice this time of year. Silence. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me, like she couldn't believe I had outplayed her. I turned to leave, but then paused, glancing at him. You can have her, buddy, I said. Good luck. You're going to need it. And with that, I walked away. I walked out of that hotel feeling lighter than I had in weeks, maybe months. Victoria didn't chase after me. She didn't scream or beg. She just stood there, frozen in the doorway, watching me leave like she couldn't believe what was happening. But that was the thing. This was happening, and she had no control over it. Jake was waiting by my car, leaning against the hood with his arms crossed. He raised an eyebrow. How'd it go? I grinned. Beautifully. We didn't even have to talk about it. He just nodded and patted my shoulder before hopping into his bike and taking off. Me? I drove home, cranked up the radio, and let the night air wash over me. It was done. The next morning, the fallout began. Victoria called me 6 times before noon. I ignored every single one. Then came the texts. Victoria, can we talk? Please. Victoria, I need to explain. Victoria, you're making a mistake. Victoria, just call me. One last time. One last time? Oh, now she wanted closure? After lying to my face for who knows how long? Nah, I left her on read. By noon, my lawyer had filed the divorce papers. By 3 p.m., Victoria had been served at her workplace. She called me immediately, but I still didn't pick up. Instead, I texted her back 2 words. Me, we're done. That was it. That was all she was getting from me. Then came the real fun part. Turns out her little affair partner? He was married, too, with kids. And thanks to some well-placed messages, not from me, but from a friend, his wife found out exactly what he'd been up to. By the end of the week, his life was in shambles. His wife threw him out, his co-workers found out, and his reputation went down in flames. As for Victoria, she tried to play the victim. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Please, let's just talk. But the problem with professional liars? No one believed them once the truth is out. Her friends turned on her. Her family was disgusted. Even her own mother called me to apologize, saying she had no idea what her daughter had become. It was poetic, really. Watching the woman who destroyed my trust, my marriage, my life, finally get exactly what she deserved. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a finger. She did it all to herself. It's funny how fast things can fall apart. One day, you think you know someone. You think you built something solid, something real. And then, just like that, it's gone. Victoria kept trying to reach me for days. At first, it was just texts and calls. Then came the emails. Then the long, desperate voicemails where her voice cracked like she was on the verge of tears. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The last time I ever saw her was a week after everything blew up. She showed up at my door, looking like a wreck, hair a mess, no makeup, eyes red and puffy. I didn't let her inside. Please, she whispered. Just 5 minutes. I crossed my arms. 5 minutes for what, Vic? To lie to me again? To tell me how much you regret it? How it wasn't what it looked like? She flinched. I don't know why I did it. I laughed. Actually laughed. You don't know? I shook my head. That's the best you've got? After throwing away our entire marriage? You don't know? Her eyes filled with tears. I messed up. I lost sight of what mattered. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I said the words that finally ended it all. You lost sight of me. She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already done. I stepped back. Goodbye, Victoria. And I shut the door in her face. That was the last time I ever saw her. The divorce was finalized a few months later. I moved on. Well, I don't know what happened to her, and I don't care. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt. It did. Badly. But looking back, I'm glad I caught her. I'm glad I walked away. Because now I'm free. And I'll never let someone like her fool me again.